not available, so he won't be doing that. And okay, we are live, so let's just get on with it. Okay, everybody. So welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, say hi and tell us where you're watching from. If you're watching live, please let us know where you're tuning in from. And I want to start, before I even introduce my amazing guest today, I want to start by posing this question, and I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind for a few minutes, and then we'll dive into it. So this is something that my guest is going to be able to answer, and I want all of you to think about this. Why is equity scary for some people? I'll just leave that there. And now I'm ready to introduce my outstanding guest today, Joanne Flinn, who is certainly, I mean, if we think of the term Woman of Excellence, which is the name of this series, I can think of a few names, and definitely Joanne is top of the list. She is truly a woman of excellence, and today you're going to have a chance to find out why and what makes a little girl turn into a woman of excellence. So Joanne's bio is, we would need just one show to share her bio. It is so impressive. But I'll just share a few things here and there. And now, because we are going to learn about her journey, her story, she will be able to bring those things into context. So at 24, she was running a multi-million business. She's been consulting for huge firms, you know, PricewaterhouseCoopers, everybody knows that. She is a twice TEDx speaker, and I highly recommend you watching her talks because they are so inspiring. She's a best-selling author, and she is also a very inspiring, as I said, woman of excellence, working towards equity. That is part of her mission. And I want to speak about all of these things. So let's start by welcoming Joanne. Joanne, hello and welcome to the Women Power Show.
Oh, Melanie, it's so wonderful to be here with you and to everyone else who is tuning in now or listening to the replay. It's a complete privilege to have this time with you all.
Thank you. The honor is all ours. So I did start with a question, why is equity scary? And I think we will get to that during this conversation. But I want to start by asking you, what do you think shaped you into the woman you are today? How was your childhood able to inspire you to do the things you've accomplished? What was your upbringing like? I know your grandmother played a huge part
Well,
in
actually,
your...
interestingly, just when you asked about that, the person who came to mind actually was my grandmother. Now, that said, both my parents are both stunning people, amazing and excellent in their own right. I feel very lucky, the people, you know, who I'm lucky enough to have as my parents. But I have to give my grandmother credit, particularly for the influence she must have had on my father. My grandmother was a woman of excellence in her generation. She was I think, the second woman in Australia to graduate from pharmacy and the first to actually run a pharmacy professionally, which you kind of think there's almost a story that women weren't professionals back 100 years ago, but this time 100 years ago, it's kind of funny to think that. You know, there she was finishing university, going to go on to go run a pharmacy. And when she finished her professional career, she was the head pharmacist at one of the biggest hospitals in Tasmania. So she not only worked and established in the entrepreneurial space with the pharmacy, but she also went on to be hugely successful as a executive in a large business. But I think the thing that as a child I particularly got was she was also very good at investing. And I only realized how good she was in that when quite some years after she passed away, and I'd been, as the eldest grandchild, I'd been part of helping settle her estate. And I knew that she'd averaged 7% over the last sort of 25, 30 odd years of her life. Anyhow, I'm sharing this with some private some of the private equity money and things like that, and sort of heavy duty bankers, and they're going, oh my God, your grandmother was good. She goes, most of us don't manage that over the long term. But I was like, yay, grandma. So I feel really lucky that I had her presence just in the gentle role model she was of what's possible for a woman. And that privilege, in all honesty, because I know it's not the story many people have, I always had a role model in front of me that showed that women could be in any place at any level of success they wanted to, because my grandmother had me. She was. I didn't have to imagine it. I had that live. And then, of course, for my father growing up with her as a mother, he suffered under no illusions that women were completely capable. And he married a woman who was completely capable and wonderful. My mother published a book a couple of years ago that's now part of the museum collection at the Asian Civilizations Museum as a contribution to culture. So she's outstanding in her own right. And so I feel very lucky I had that as a model close at home to see in action and just realize it was normal. It wasn't an outrageous thing. And I speak to other friends and I realize they didn't necessarily have that, and feel very, very blessed.
It's so true. I can really resonate with that, because I grew up in just what I thought was normal, where, we were not, there was not even a conversation about gender. I mean, we were just all the same, because just for the fact that we were human. So yeah, it was a big shock to get out into the real world and see that that was not the reality. And
it's not the reality in some places. And I think possibly because I had that as my background, when I entered the corporate world, I showed up as a human being and walk into a room as a human being, and not mentally walking into the room as a woman. And I was in a conversation a couple of days ago, and it was just like, that's quite a big nuance. It's such a simple one, but quite a big one. So I wasn't, the gender wasn't in my definition. Now, if I was out in the evening, that's a totally different thing. But in the office, I'm a human being. Funny,
I really get that.
How's that been for you, though? Because I mean, you've had an interesting journey too.
Well, I mean, in some ways, it's when I listen to you, and I am, and I must say, I'm a huge fan of Joan's. Okay, Joanne's. I am a huge fan. So I watch her talks. I've got her books and everything. And every time I read something or listen to you, I feel like there's a lot in common. I can see myself in many of the stories you tell. But I think that also makes us, I don't want to say more powerful, obviously, but it does make us powerful, because we do know like both realities, and we can bridge the gap between them.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really, really powerful. And what you say, like, I've always been an entrepreneur, but I was always connected to the corporate world, because my first business was an academy. So we used to teach in these huge companies, and it was always interesting. I'll just say that, because I didn't, as you were saying, gender was not part of my language even. I was there, as a teacher, and I didn't even think about it. But it was funny, because then some dynamics do change when you're not in the working environment.
Yeah.
And that's interesting also. Yeah. And it also, I mean, obviously, where we were brought up geographically and culturally also plays a huge role, and all the different influences we have in our lives. I also had very, very powerful women around me, and very supportive men around me. So it's always been that balance, that absolutely beautiful balance, which is, I think, the way to pursue equity. We need that balance. It's not a fight once against the other. We need that collaboration. And so that also, when you speak about that, it also really resonates. And I think that's the way to change things, when we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah, I found that when I was asked to do the TED Talk around the purple elephant, that when I really was honing in on what was the core message in that, for anyone here who, I mean, I feel super lucky that I've been honored to do 2 TED Talks, but I remember when they asked me to do the first one, and you get this thing, and the brief is, if you had one idea to share in your entire lifetime. Isn't like, what an over. Yeah. Well, I mean, I got lots of ideas, like having to pick one, that's hard. You know, like the best idea in my entire lifetime. I don't want to think I've already had it, because, you know, I've got years ahead of me. There's going to be some more good ones coming. And so I put the best one out that had the deepest truth of where I was in my life then in the first talk. And then only a couple of years later, I was asked to do the second one around the purple elephant. And because it was in a space of equity and men and women, and there seemed to be people pushing me to talk about it as, you know, this expression, as you said, some people seem to see it as a fight. And for me, it wasn't what I was wanting to see or felt was the powerful pathway. Because I mean, think about DNA, right? Let's go back to, like, sorry, I'm a science geek, guys, gals listening. You know, I love knowledge and information, so I have this eclectic bundle of things that come into my stories. So like, I look like DNA. You know, there's the X chromosome and the Y chromosome. So I'm going like, we're all made up of both, right? You know, we've got, you know, X and Y elements in us. So the story that we don't is to have us put away part of who we are, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the story. I remember being a teenager reading this book about the male and the female brain. Struck me as a really weird thing, because I was as a human being, and suddenly my brain had gender. I was like, how did that happen? It's not running around looking like Barbie doll. And I was so offended, because they're busy telling me that because I was a female, I was meant to think a certain way. And I'm going, but I don't. The way I think and process is like what they're describing a male brain, but it just didn't compute. It was like, I'm a human, and I have some things that work this way, and I have some things that work that way. And I have male friends who, you know, are better emotional processors than I am, and I have female friends that can do maths in their head. They got different brains.
Exactly.
And so what it's sort of like, when I was mulching into the space on equity, and it's something I've followed and been an advocate for a long time, the idea that we're making each other wrong just didn't feel right. The space where we see the good and the piece of us that could grow if we gave it space, which is as true for men as it is for women. I mean, both genders get told that they can and they can't be things based on their gender, and we both lose out for it. So, you know, that was, you know, where I've sort of settled at the moment around, you know, what creates equity, and that's really encouraging ourselves to create that space for ourselves and for doing it for each other.
Exactly. I just love what you're saying. Exactly. And that's the way forward. That's the way forward. And we should be not judged because we are one gender or the other. It's like, no, that's not who we are. We are all humans, and we should all have equal opportunity, and then do with that opportunity whatever we want to do, or whatever we're able to do, or whatever, you know, it depends. Some people have more ambition than others also, but it's not a question of gender.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some interesting conversations around that. And I have always found, whenever I speak about these topics, I always make sure that I'm not lecturing, because I think that's also not the right way to go. It's, you need to be able to make people feel what you feel when you're a woman, and when you might be walking out late at night and you're, you know, alone, and you might feel scared, because those are the type of things that men don't realize. But as soon as they do, it opens up their mind. They're like, oh my goodness, I never thought that happened to women. And it's all about having these conversations, and they deal with stuff too. So it's, you know, we're not so different, although we are, because every human being is different. So yeah, that's also interesting. And can you tell us a bit more about the Purple Elephant Equity and that whole project? I think it's really fascinating. And I did want to wear my purple top for you. And I actually was looking for my little elephant necklace and I couldn't find it. Sorry.
Oh, that would have been wonderful, though. Well, it began, like, the reason why we started the project and actually like taking that particular metaphor out to the world was a couple of years ago, the World Economic Forum published some data that was saying that it was 219 years until women had equal pay across the globe. And which gets, you know, I'm going to use an Australian expression, it gets up my nose. It's just like, oh, you know, that is absolutely ridiculous in a world that says, you know, my entire working life, I've worked for organizations that say equal work, equal pay. And so I've literally gone, okay, that's your statement of values. Excellent. We're going to make sure that's the case. And I remember at one stage being, anyone here in a salary negotiation, if you can get away with this one, go for it. What happened was I was being shifted to another part of the business. And I had a male colleague who was being shifted too. And he had a wife and 2 kids. And so he was getting a housing allowance that was for a wife and 2 kids. He was getting school fees, la, la, la. He was getting home leave for the 4 of them and all that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, equal work, equal pay. I want the same housing allowance. I want school fees. They're going, but you don't have kids. I go, so? What's the point? I said, equal work, equal pay. It's the principle put into action. If he gets 4 flights a year, I get 4 flights a year. Oh, but you don't have family to travel. I said, yes, I have family back home that I want to go see. I said, my family can't come with me. Anyhow, they ended up going, yeah, actually, equal work, equal pay. And I said, oh, awesome. I said, because you're counting what we do in the office. And the rest of my life is my life. It was absolutely brilliant. I actually got to go home regularly to see my family. So yeah. I told the entire story to my male colleague, who said it was absolutely brilliant and he loved it. And as I said to the head of business, I said, I'm highly unlikely to go and use those school fees because I don't have children. But the principle stands.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it's your money to do whatever you like with it. Yeah. Whether you spend it on school fees or on cocktails, who cares? It's your life. Exactly.
When I saw that data, it was just stuff that really, I was like, wait a second, this is not, if an organization has a principle that is not equal work, equal pay, it's a different principle in play. If a country has a principle that says equal work, equal pay, or a law that says equal work, equal pay, either it's truth or it's a lie. And if the law is upheld as something that should be respected, then the not following it is, funnily enough, a breach of the law. And it's out, the law, at least coming from the common law system, which is about equity, is founded on the principle of equity. It sort of, it's just so like, no, this is just ridiculous. And then I remember telling my mom, I said, Mom, can't believe it. My mother just goes, what? We fought for equal work, equal pay 50 years ago. I can't believe it's not the case. I said, Mom, in our country, 25%. UK, I'm from Australia. I know my accent doesn't give it away too quickly. I think Australia was 25%. I think the US was 26 and the UK 27 or 24, i.e. all muscle men is the same. Mm-hmm. Still, that's significant a difference.
It is. Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those ones of, she goes, I can't believe 50 years. And I'm going, yeah, Mum, and they're saying it's another 8 generations. I said, that is absolutely ludicrous. It takes executive leadership to simply decide, this is the principle we say, are we living it? Are we honoring it and following it? And everything else is an excuse. My personal, fairly grounded opinion on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And yes, on paper, many countries are, complying with that. But then when you look at the real data, it's not so. And I also find it very interesting when you bring up this topic with people. Some people prefer, I think it's just a question of, I mean, some are not aware, obviously, but other people are like, no, 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 the law says we're equal, so that's it. I'm like, yeah, but you know, facts don't support that. No, no, no. If the law says it, we are equal. And I always think, is it because it's more comfortable just to believe that, because you don't really need to take action? When you think something is unfair, maybe you feel the need to take action, and that's always scary and, you know, a bit more uncomfortable, but it is interesting. Yeah, I mean, regarding Spain, I don't actually know the data. I should have looked it up. But it's not, it is on paper. And I think Spain in particular has come a really long way, taking into account that, I don't know, like 50 years ago, there was a dictatorship and women had no rights here. And now it's actually, there's still a lot to do, obviously, but it's getting there. But, you know, we also need to think about the world at large. Like, we're all at such different stages when it comes to equity. And I really think that the countries who, you know, probably moving faster, we need to lead the other countries who need the help and the support to move a bit faster and really make those 8 generations. I mean, oh, please, just thinking about it makes me cringe. No, I want to see change in my lifetime. So how can we make those changes faster? What do you think needs to be done?
I think there's two spaces that are each add to it. One is realizing that, you know, from a very broad perspective, that people say that, you know, there's not enough money and things like that, you know, well, we can't, is realizing that, you know, here's the financial side of me, that the ROI of investing in women and investing in girls has an incredibly high payback. So even when they look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs that were put out a few years ago, item number 5 is economic empowerment of women and girls. And that one is considered an accelerator of every other SDG. So things that happen there basically compound and help all the rest move forward, which is a pretty powerful thing to go, like, if you want to create leverage of improving your society and improving your environment, improving your future in your own community, this is an incredibly powerful place. And it's a pattern and story that has, you know, researchers and people from lots of different countries have been looking at this and just going, it holds true, and it's held true for a long time. So, I mean, that's a really powerful place of just going, where you're able to do and contribute to something like this, it makes a significant difference in on it. And then the second, so, you know, that's an active statement of saying, like, well, you know, help women stay and work, help women get the schooling, because it pays back very, very powerfully over time. And then the second one, and this was something that really struck me at a deeper level last year during the Black Lives Matter conversations that were going on. Because when that initially happened, because that's another part of equity, is another space in the broad space of equity. And I remember being on a call, and a very long-standing friend said, Joanne, you haven't said anything. I'm really disappointed in you that you haven't showed up. And I burst into tears on her. And I said, I am watching and I don't know what to say. And until I have something helpful to say, it's not that I don't care. I don't have words for this yet. It's not that I don't care. I just don't have the words yet. And then a couple of days later, you know, when I'm mulling on it, I watched something out of Australia. Now, Australia has a different dynamic. Shows up, sadly, in some very similar ways to the US story. But the Australian process around it has been different. The Australian story around it is, for us, the Aboriginal are the first people. They're recognized as the first people. They're not a third nation, they're the first people. In many, many forms, they are formally acknowledged and respected, and the land that they held and curated is formally respected. So as a culture, there's been a lot moving forward, but there's still an awful lot of bias going on. And I was watching an Australian comedian talk about it, and the piece that landed for me about where my voice could add something helpful in this space was that I realized that if I was scared to treat you as equal because I thought I was going to lose, it was my fear. It wasn't about you. It was my fear. And that's a very different thing, because it's not about me looking at someone and saying you're wrong, you need to be that. It's like my fear is saying that if I treat you equally, I'll be worse off. If I treat you equally, I'll lose. If I treat you, and that consideration, like, whoa. And I remember writing a piece and posting it on LinkedIn, which felt quite scary because I don't tend to normally, it was sort of in the topic of the day, somewhat felt in some way a little bit more political than one's meant to be in a public professional forum where you're not meant to pretend to have an opinion about anything. As you can see, I do. It was like, when we realized, when there's like, for me, when the shift was when I stopped looking at them in fear for me losing and just going, somehow or other, if I look at you as another human being, whoever you is, whoever you are listening to this conversation, if I look at you as another human being and I ask myself, how can we be greater together? It's a really different conversation. If I own, it's my fear that's looking at you and making you less than anything other than a wonderful human being, that's my stuff. That's my stuff to own.
Yeah.
And that requires, a scale of personal responsibility to own that. Yeah, it's my stuff. That's not them. It's my stuff. It's my fear.
Absolutely. And see, that's why I asked the question at the beginning, why is equity scary?
Yeah,
exactly. And I think oftentimes it also comes from this scarcity mentality, like, well, are there really opportunities for everybody? Because we've made to believe that the world is not fair, there's rich and poor, there's not opportunities for everybody. And I think until we are aware of that and we know that that's not true, things are going to move slowly. And again, it's more comfortable to be scared. It's not a nice feeling, but it's a known feeling. You're scared. You know it's there. You know it. And what's really scary, or what really takes courage, is to say, no, I'm not okay with being scared. I want to look within and probably find things I'm not going to be proud of, or things I didn't even realize, and work on those things and become a better person. And as you were saying, we have to own it. I think it's fine for kids to make mistakes. Teenagers, come on, you have to make mistakes.
That's the point of being a teenager, really, isn't it?
Exactly. Why would you be a teenager if not? But then you need to spend your adulthood trying to make those mistakes better, and learn from them. So when you're an adult, there's no excuse. If there's an issue, face it. It's not easy. It's not a nice journey, probably, but it's the only way to grow. If you don't want to stay stuck, it's the only way to grow.
Well, the piece that I found, because definitely there's a journey and there's definitely some icky pieces in there, is that as much as I don't like it, I have learned that I feel less icky if I'm prepared to go and deal with the icky piece. Otherwise, it's like something that's underneath here that I'm carrying around anyway. So it's always sort of sitting there, being a bit uncomfortable. But when I'm prepared to pull it out, look at it, and go, oh my God, that is really ugh, and do something about it to help me grow into, whoever else is involved. It's amazing how much better it is. And therefore I'm showing up better and I'm not putting that stuff onto other people. And like one of the things this last year, and I don't know for anyone who's listening here, whether you can relate to this one, but I've had days where, it's like, it's had to get so simple. And I've just gone, I am grateful I'm alive. I am grateful I'm breathing. I'm grateful I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful I can get food on my table. And everything else is wonderful and a luxury.
Exactly.
And in that, actually, when life gets that simple, the core thing we have is our time and what we choose to do with it.
Exactly. But you need to be aware of it to begin with.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hardest bit. But it's true. So
awesome.
When did you realize you wanted to help people go through different processes? I mean, you do lots of different things, and I found it really funny when you were speaking about your TEDx talk, because you are very creative. You're a creative mind. And I think that is probably the worst question someone can ask you, like, out of all the things you do, which is your favorite, or what is your best idea, so far? It's like that feels like torture, doesn't it?
Yeah, like this is just like, anyhow, so which element of that would you like to go explore?
Okay, so I think everything you do, from my perspective, because I'm also creative, I can see every piece fitting in together, perfectly. I don't see any disconnection between all the different things you do. But from somebody who maybe has a different thought process, how would you explain to them all the different things you do, and what is there a common mission to all of them, and that's why you're able to do so many things? Or how does it work for you? Because I mean, you're an artist, you're a consultant, you're a coach, you're a speaker. My goodness.
I know, it's just amazing. I think for anyone who's listening, that there's a couple of things that I realized was, and again, like possibly grandmother, but also my father is a fine example, and my mother, was realizing that if I chose to focus on something and give it a decent shot, the odds were I was going to be able to I mightn't be the top in the world, but I'd be able to get pretty good. And the advantage that I find now, and I was doing a strategic refresh workshop yesterday, and I had, it's very important when you're doing a workshop with people who don't know, you have to have one of those slides up there that say, this is me, with lots of, and they're kind of looking, they go like, oh my God, you're seriously impressive. And I'm going, I've been working at it for quite some years. This is called an accumulation over time. I think it's taken work. When I decided I wanted to write, I had to learn how to write in a really different style that I'd ever written professionally. And it took 3 years of hard work, and an awful lot of evenings to do it, and finding some good editors and, working on a craft to do it. Speaking, when I first started speaking, I was in high school. I was the kind of kid who hated, I was at one of those schools, where they'd go and ask you just a question and you had to stand up to answer.
Ooh.
I mean, literally, I hated it. I was just like, no attention on me, please. I didn't want anyone looking at me. And
I was the same. And look at us now.
Yeah, exactly. So people say, oh, but it's going like, honey, there's been a lot of practice that's gone into this. A lot of practice in the craft, and also a lot of practice on work on myself too, to not be as self-conscious. I remember there was like the very first one, it was high school debating. Anyone can remember back to high school debating society? Oh my God, I nearly fainted. I stuttered left, right, and center. I still stutter. If people ask me questions and my brain is processing, but the processing in the brain and the mouthpiece are not always totally in sync. One works faster than the other, and like the technology jams. And now I just sort of go, oh, well, that's happening. I don't take it anywhere near as personally as I did. So when I look at some of the things, there's been a deliberate personal choice of saying, how can I grow and be better and deeper at what I'm doing? How can I be more relaxed and centered in who I am with other people? And so those two things have been like a dancing journey. You know, one's been about me as a human being and the other's being about how I can contribute. And so, you know, some years it doesn't feel like one's going very far, but one of the other parts might be doing a lot. And then that one part might quieten down and another piece move. And so if I look at it on a short period, often, you know, in all honesty, it doesn't feel like it's, you know, it's like anything. It's the daily slog. As Einstein said, you know, genius is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration. Yeah, you know, you get one day where you go, whoa, you get 19 days where you're going, oh. Yeah. And so you know, I've learned not to judge, but what it has done from the outside world has meant that there's pieces that pop because of that accumulation. And so, you know, elements like I grew up in an environment where my parents and the work that my father particularly did was very much around how can we feed the world so that people are not dying of starvation. And they were doing groundbreaking research and seeing this incredibly visionary goal, and they achieved it in a lifetime. So I grew up in an environment where people were doing some very big vision thing and prepared to commit long periods of time to it. And each piece, something would happen. And so now when I tell people that I've chosen to spend time, and I deliberately put several years deliberately focusing full time on art and not on the consulting, because I realized I'd put that aside for 20 years of my life and not done it. And yet it was a very, very core part of my soul. And so that part of me was dying because it wasn't being fed. And it was like it went into rebellion. Now, you know, part of me went to rebellion, just going like, we need. And actually, I might just do this because it is a conversation. So those of you who are watching, I'm going to swap my Zoom background off this one here and actually show you my background here. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because my background actually is some of my art.
Love
in
it.
Here. So, yeah. So these ones here, the ones that are like lines, they're all based off music. So I pick music that's got a particular feeling, and then I draw it out like notes in different colors, and then paint it. And so the green one here is bliss, and the one that you can see just a little bit there is called joy. So I just have it radiating. So you think like music just distilled onto a canvas, just radiating bliss and joy. And then this one here that you can see on the side, this was shortlisted for Harper's Bazaar's annual art prize here in Singapore. And this one's, I call it Voluptuousness of the Soul. And I have a whole series that I do where I create wings that are all about choice and transformation. And
wow, that's so beautiful. And I mean, your art has been showcased in museums. I mean, it's that good. It's not just a hobby. You're a proper artist.
Yeah. Yay. But that, again, that's, and if you sort of like some of the threads is the willingness to put the time in and put the focus in and to ask for the help and to be okay with the fact that as I was beginning and learning a new element, I was useless and I was going to get it wrong. And then I would get better if I kept at it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you get invited to go and exhibit in a museum and you kind of go like, really? Yeah, who are they talking about? Then you realize it's you. It's like, then you have to, then the inner child who's going like, yay! And, the responsible adults trying to do the calm.
I'll check my planner.
Yeah, exactly. Let me go see. But the same thing has also worked like in my professional life. It's been a willingness to see something that I thought was important and meaningful to go do, and to put the equivalent work in the learning and understanding. And like in art, there's a stage when you're working on a new concept where you're messing around, you're trying different angles and things until it kind of gels and you go like, oh, that's it. And in the strategic refresh and crisis management work that I do with my clients, there's a very similar thing, because it's working at like, okay, in all these different things and with a world that's changing so fast, it's like, well, what are the elements that are really going to help us ground and keep moving? What are the elements in that won't just have us grounded and moving, but also will give us wings and lift so we really can get to where we want to, even with all this? So there's very much a a parallel to the artistic stage of the creative induction one. And then it hits a point where you go, okay, now I know what it is. And then you can just still start going, and the discipline of the build into action can then happen. So there's some amazing parallels between the two different spaces. And I find it's only got stronger in the last year with the world being so turbulent.
Right.
That I've had to really pull, the creative artist of me and the business executive me, and going, okay, it's all these things have got to actually do this together. And it's, and it's got to work out a way of how does it move together and flow, because that's what's required in a world that's shifting, because rigidity, it just creates stuck. So I mean, I don't, I will, when I've said this a few more times, it will distill to a lovely short story. But right now it's just like, I'm just amazed at seeing it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go back to the equity element that we talked about earlier, at one level, what I'm seeing for me personally is I'm having to value both sides of me in the same plane. Like if earlier I was talking about like valuing the masculine and the feminine in me, and seeing them both as valuable and seeing them both as paths, as paths that are abundant. In this one, it's seeing the logical and the money and the creative and the serenity and uncertainty as both of them needing to be together.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's just sort of like, oh my God. I probably could find a lovely, very, very, a good Buddhist friend would probably say, "Just Joanne, that's called the whole Buddhist philosophy of, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out." And I go,
many things.
Sometimes it's just like, yeah,
yes, and certainly the last year has. I find it fascinating on the psychological aspect of it, because I'm always observing. Like, I'm not a speaker. I'm not usually, like, I'm very quiet. I prefer to listen. I obviously have to speak when I'm working, but I like to observe. And it's been such a fascinating thing to watch how people have been reacting, adapting or not. And I think it's brought out the best and the worst in people. But for real leaders, it has really helped, step up even more and just play bigger.
yeah.
Because I think growth for that kind of flexible, adaptive person has been huge in the last year. And everyone I speak to, I'm seeing this as a pattern. So, I mean, it's obviously a terrible time, and, people are really suffering and going through lots of stuff, but it also brings transformation and progress, and we also need to embrace that. And it's so funny listening to you. I mean, you would be like my bright, very, very smart sister, but it's so funny because I was thinking like, yeah, oh yeah. Like I was also that child, I never wanted the attention. I always, I was the good girl and, just trying not to stand out or anything. And it's scary when you feel you have to do it, not because of yourself, not because of you wanting to take center stage, but because it's part of your mission. And that does change everything, but it's also a scary step. It is. And then another thing you mentioned is focus. And I must say that changed everything for me, because I'm also very creative. I used to run, well, I still do, I guess. I've always run like multiple businesses and done different things. I'm a designer, but I'm also a teacher, and I'm also a coach, and I'm also this and that and that. And to me, it makes sense in my mind. That's who I am. But I know for people outside, it doesn't always make sense. And I used to think I could do everything at once. And then when I discovered focus, I realized I had only been, playing halfway when I was trying to do everything at once. And now it's all about focus. And maybe my design, more creative side is maybe a bit, it's taken a nap now in the last year, but I'm really focusing on something else. And that's when it's really thriving, because you do need focus. We cannot do everything at once. But I also feel that I need that creative outlet. And although everything I do has an element of creativity, but designing is a whole different story. And I do need it, and I hear it calling, and I'm like, wait, the time will come. Be a few more months and I will be back to that, because I also find it brings like the perfect balance to, like, when we're working in a different environment, let's say, it can be, even though we might love what we do and we're passionate, and it can get stressful for different reasons, and being able to create it, just it's like downtime. It's like it feeds the soul. It really does. And one thing I do see your talents coming together is in your books. Dun, 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 dun. And everybody, I mean, all your books are amazing, and I would highly recommend everyone reading them. This is my favorite. I take it everywhere, and honestly, like, it fits in a handbag. So even when I used to travel, I would take it with me. What I love, I want you to tell us about this book, but what I found very interesting about what you explain is how wrong we have been about karma. And let me explain, like in Spain, for instance, and I know in other cultures, when people refer to karma, they do it in a negative way, like, oh, karma will find you, it will get you, it will, it's this scary thing that's going to happen to you as a punishment, when it's the opposite. And it makes sense, because there's always two sides or more to everything. So what is this book about, and what does it teach us about, in this particular case, about business? I love how you combine those things, and how you explain how we can obviously apply what you teach to our lives, and we should, but also there is a different way of running a business and doing business.
Okay, well, first I have to thank you so much for asking. And when I was putting together Karma, I have to say, very heavily based on wisdom and the teachings of some absolutely fantastic mentors. So I take no personal credit for it. I thank them for the wisdom that they gave me, and the fact that when I was sitting and writing, the words were seeming to come on, saying, like, do this and do this now. Because like the piece that I realized, and I, for people here, I spent 5 years working in Thailand, and Thailand is one of the few countries in the world that is Buddhist. It's Buddhist. And so I had the privilege of living and working in a truly Buddhist country, and seeing that version of Buddhism in action over time. And Thailand's one of the few countries that really hasn't had a lot of invasions. While stuff's happened, it's done not too bad. It's had its ups and downs, but that's true for every country. And then when I moved to Singapore, which is where I've been based for some time, and I met these mentors, and some of them go back to the Tibetan Buddhist lineages, was this realization that in Christianity, which is the tradition that I grew up and was baptized in, I'd heard about the golden rule. That's like a fundamental thread, but I hadn't heard an awful lot on how I could put it into action. And so when I started, like, that was this the structure, the way they were talking about karma, they're going like, what you give, you get back. What you do to others, you get back. I mean, like, very golden rule, right? But the piece that they said is that the core one is like, what's your intention when you do to others? The deep part, like, what's in your heart? So when in the book, it takes it into like this really fundamental things of going like, we think something good has happened just because, we're blessed. But the truth is, we've done something good to somebody else. we think something bad happens to us, you know, and as you say that, you know, often the way the word karma gets used because we've done something bad to somebody else. Well, in both cases, it's what we've done has created the initial thing. And what I loved was once I started going, well, okay, and I love the teaching that they had was, so what's the small little thing? Because everything starts from something small. I mean, like an artwork starts from like a little tiny idea that pops and then grows and grows. And this is just a true, like a plant starts from a little tiny seed, like an oak comes from a little tiny acorn that grows and grows. Like things just come from like tiny and then grow. So I said, often what we have physically visible in our life and what's around us comes from really small things that we've done to other people. And so in Karma in Action, it was about just creating a nice, clean structure that we could go, okay, well, what do I want? What's the essence of it? So how can I give that to someone in a powerful way for them? And then what can I do to increase that power? Like if you'd like to think of it, it's like fertilizing and watering seeds. What can I do to fertilize and water the karma that I've just done and to see it flourish around me? And the piece that I loved was I don't know if you remember the analogy about like, okay, well, so bad, you know, I'm doing all this good, but bad stuff's still happening. You could think of them as weeds growing in the garden, or you could think of them, well, like, yeah, you try, you know, you're in a busy airport back in the day when you remember we had airports and you go flying. You know, there'd be a whole bunch of planes that would need to get off the runway. So if you've got like some backlog of stuff that needs to get cleared up, just stay in it. And what I found for me personally, and I would love to hear what it's been for you, was that shift has just meant, okay, you know, okay, so stuff's happening. Okay, celebrate. Bad karma's been cleared off. Yay. What's the good I can do? What's the good I can do? And it's taken a lot of the traditional worry and stress out, because as soon as I see that little worry thing going on, I go, okay, yeah, that's a seed I planted. Let's go plant an encouraging, clean seed with somebody else. What can I do to be helpful? And not, you know, deliberately try and weed out that that stuff that's creating the, you know, the imbalance. So the, you know, the book's got those five core steps in it to help, and a variety of different ideas to help structure so that you can put it into action. How have you found it yourself in it?
Okay, so for me, it was just a joy to go through it. I think I read it in one go and I go back to it every now and then. And before I even go into the content, what I also love is that we can get a bit more of your, obviously your talent, your creativity, and your soul, even your intention, because there is like art in the book. Okay, so we won't reveal anything, you need to go and buy it, but it's a lovely book to have. I mean, it looks beautiful, and that to me, beauty is one of my core values. I need beauty around me, and I need the beauty in the people. I love beautiful people, and I don't mean physically, I love beautiful souls. And so this book is really nurturing that core value. What I really loved was how actionable it is. So you're reading and you're already taking action. And that's, I think, probably your intention. You know, it is a handbook. I mean,
Yeah.
do this. It's simple to do, but it's the type of thing you read about and you think, well, okay, of course it makes sense. And I must say, I was doing some of the things without even realizing. I've probably always done some of the things, but what really changed everything for me is that now I am intentional about it. So I'm intentional about the positive, and whenever I find myself, as you were saying, you know, that little thing nagging the back of my mind, I look at it and I say, okay, what can I learn from it? What is it telling me? And how can I change it and turn it around?
Yeah.
And that makes you feel really powerful, because you're no longer depending on what's happening to me or what, you know, no, you're in control. If things are going on, look at them and see how you can turn them around. And it's just a beautiful way of connecting kindness. The way I see it is whenever I set an intention, and I like to think about, like, again, I don't want to reveal everything, but when you activate things or
Yeah.
people or feelings, and I always see them as little lights, like stars shining. And I see, for example, I can see you as a star shining, and there's a beam of light reaching me. And then I get that energy, I get that light, and I'm able to keep some of it and then share it also with somebody else. So there's another beam of light and lighting everywhere. And I really think if we all did this, I mean, how wonderful would it be? So it's I just love it. I love the simplicity of it because it's something you can, as I said, take action on, but it's really powerful also. And then the more you do it, the more it becomes part of your day. Like in the same way as, you know, every day when I wake up smiling. Did I always do that, or did I create a habit and then it became second nature? I can't even remember. I wake up smiling because it's another day. It's another opportunity to change things, to do things, to achieve. If there's a blue sky, I'm grateful. So in the same way, I have a gratefulness exercise within my day, and it's just part of what I do. I don't even have to think about it anymore. This has become part of my day. And then I also love, and I do it religiously every single day, my peppermint meditation.
Oh, wonderful.
I enjoy it so much.
Isn't
And
it a gorgeous thing to do?
it's so easy to do. You can
Yeah.
do it, you know, and it's just comforting. To me, that's a moment where, you know, it's like my moment in the day when I just feel so comforted and so grounded and so happy. That it's a very special feeling. It's happiness, but it's much more. I don't even know how to describe it. So I have to thank you for writing this book, because it really is phenomenal. It might look like a little book you can read in, well, a couple of hours. I don't even think it takes that long, but it can literally change the way you navigate your life and business. It can really do that. It's powerful.
Thank you for the gift of sharing this.
No, thank you for writing it and sharing it with us.
Because when I wrote it, well, the writing it was one thing, the publishing it was the scary piece. Going, here am I coming from a very sort of left brain logical corporate world, what will people say if I start talking about this? Except it seemed important. It seemed like there is a way where business can be kind and abundant and prosperous and productive. It doesn't have to be that cutthroat, destructive story. And if I can show up and it helps someone else to be in that space too, have the courage to do it. And so what you just shared is truly a gift, because what I can see is it's done that. It's like, wow.
Definitely. Definitely. And I actually recommend this book to everyone I have a conversation with. And even like the Women Power group in Spain, which is the one I lead, not everybody can read in English and really fully understand, but the ones who do, and we do have an international group, so we have people from many different places, although they're based in Spain or Latin America, but the ones who can read in English, or English is the first language, I always tell them about this book. So if you ever do a Spanish edition, let me know, because I will be asking my Women Power to read it, because it's just, I don't know, it's just so beautiful. It's a tool you can have, you can tap into it, and you might want to go back to it. Just, I do that all the time. I know what I know the tools, but I still like to go back. And every time you reread it, because you're at a different stage, or because that day has been different, I don't know, you have a different perspective, or you find it even more valuable. There's always something different, even though the letters are the same, the words are the same, but the meaning is not the same.
Like, I have found that, like, that's when I know that it wasn't my logical me writing it. It was the me that's into the, like the me that's the bigger universe me. That has to be the one that was showing up for that, because that's the eternal piece that somehow seems to be able to come through.
Exactly. And that's what happens when you do something on purpose and because it's your mission. It's a different process completely. The logical mind is not present, which we are grateful for the logical mind most of the day, but sometimes we need the other type of brain to bring this great work out. So amazing. Well, Joanne, oh, sorry, please.
I was going to say, then the logical minds, I find a useful tool to support these things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and one thing I have had to learn how to do is I was always very like, if I couldn't prove it, I had issues with it. I was like that very scientific mind. And I've had to be okay with embracing that there's another dimension, because we are humans and it's not just about logic and science, and there's something else. And I wouldn't even speak about these things like just probably even like a couple of years ago. It was like, no, I'm very, very proper and I need my facts, and, everything I do is based on science. Well, there's things you cannot explain you can explain them with science also, but there is another dimension to it. And I think also when you're really aligned with your mission, it's when you realize that, because if not, how can you explain a mission or a purpose? There's something bigger, whatever it is.
It's kind of, I find it such an adventure.
Indeed. Yeah. That's why life is so fascinating. It's like, if you are curious, there's just not a dull moment.
Keeps it glorious and good.
Exactly. Yes, it does, and we are grateful for that. Well, Joanne, it's been an absolute pleasure. I would just stay here and chat to you all day, but I'm sure you have other things to do also. But by the way, what's the time over there? It must be
9 o'clock at night in Singapore.
Okay, right. It's 3 p.m. here in Madrid, Spain. So everybody watching, if it's morning, afternoon, evening, or night to you, thanks for joining. And please make sure you catch the replay, because it's so worth it. Joanne is absolutely fantastic. Connect to her, follow her, her content, because it's really, truly inspiring. And I'm so grateful you were able to join me today. Joanne, thank you.
Very much. So just if people wanting to know, reach out on LinkedIn. That's always a wonderful, reliable spot. And then the second one is Karma and Karma in Action are both available on Amazon, which means it can get shipped easily to your front door.
Exactly.
Because, bookshops aren't as open as they used to be.
Nothing is. We miss our life before.
I know. Once upon a time.
We'll get back to going out and traveling and all those things.
I'm looking forward to a glass of red wine and manchego with you.
Absolutely. On the house. That would be wonderful. Well, Joanne, have a great evening. Thank you so much again for sharing your wisdom and your vibrancy, and we just love you.
Thank you for inviting me and sharing an hour of your life with me and connecting, and just the beauty of this time together.
Thank you so much. And for everybody watching, thank you. Remember, you can watch a Woman Power Show, the Women of Excellence series, every Saturday on this profile, DK Bakshi, although we will be sharing it everywhere else, but the show happens live on this profile. And make sure you tune in, because this is how inspired your Saturday can be. So thank you for watching, and I'll see everybody very, very soon. Thank you, Joanne. Bye.